and something about you, I can't put my finger on it. I ain't never, and think about it, that thief ain't never had no teaching. He ain't never been to no church. He ain't never had no prayer, none of that stuff. But he recognized, I deserve this. You don't. And I don't know who you really are, but I believe you are who you say you are. And so if you could just remember me, that's all I ask. Just put in a good word, because I'm about to die too. I don't know what's coming next. You know what I mean? I don't know what's to come. But just, I believe you are who you say you are. So if you could just put a good word in for me.
No,
And
yeah.
just like that. And see, just like that, that right there, that's one of the most powerful moments, I think, in the Bible, because it shows you it's not about all, like, people get so caught up in these works, these works, these works. Do this, don't do that, do this, don't do that. Christ looked, matter of fact, Christ fought more with the religious church folks than he did with anybody else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because of that. And I think that, once again, that's one of the big misconceptions. And so because of that, we have found ourselves in this place where we are still caught up in this moral struggle, right? We're going back and forth, and what's to believe, what's not to believe. Good, we should be doing a bunch of good, and that makes you a good person. Or you should be, or if you do bad, you're a bad person. It's like, well, the reality is nobody's perfect. So if you know what I mean, nobody's perfect in this world. You know what I'm saying? We walk and we live and we love because of that intrinsic value. And as a Christian, I know that and here's the other thing. As a Christian, I have been redeemed, right? So as a Christian, I'm forgiven. So it's only right that if I'm forgiven, I should be able to forgive others. If I know I'm loved, regardless of how jacked up I am, I should be able to love others regardless of how jacked up they are. If I know, you know what I'm saying? See, my faith stands on the fact that God loves me even when I jack some stuff up, right?
Yeah.
And so as that, I reflect that image, and I say, even though you've jacked some stuff up, I still choose to love you as a person. I still choose to do right by you. I'm not going to go, like, you can't say, you know, I want to reflect the image of God. I want to live as though, like Jordan Peterson said, live as though God exists, right? You know what I mean? So you can't say that you reflect that and you want to walk in this way, but you're turning around and you cussing folks out and punch people in the face, and you know what I mean? And you know, cutting people off in traffic, and like we talked about, you know what I mean? There is a balance of, okay, where do I stand in my identity as a person, as a human being, right? What am I trying to reflect?
Okay.
And then I act that out and walk that out with everybody else. And life would be so much simpler. And I think we're saying a lot of the same things. You know,
Yeah.
for me, it's just a matter of, I think there has to be a focal point, right? Because to me, if there's no focal point, right, if there's no foundational uh, aspect, right? I won't say deity, I won't say person or being. I just say if there's no foundational aspect, then the lines of morality and what's good and bad can shift and turn. I mean, you look at history, you look at the Aztecs and the Mayans and all them. I mean, you figure they used to sacrifice, you know, I think they sacrificed 80,000 people in their lifetime, you know, to whatever they believed in, whatever the case is. And so I think that there's an aspect of, to them, that was good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you were to do that today, you look at us and be like, what the heck? You want to sacrifice 80,000 people?
Well,
You
yeah,
know, go ahead.
even but you know, sacrifice was even part of, you know, the Hebrews, and it wasn't really until Christianity, later Christianity, not super early Christianity, not like first and second century Christianity, that sacrifice, even animal sacrifice, went completely away. You know, that was a very pagan, human and
Right.
animal sacrifice is a very pagan thing. Um, and so, you know, that actually brings me into my next question for you, because
Yeah.
I feel like I got questions, and I feel like it's good when we ask
Yeah.
each other and then we each explain.
For sure.
But
Yeah.
so, you know, you're looking at this modern world, and we know that, you know, the population isn't going down. Do you feel that these older religions, you know, let's talk about, let's pick out the three main Abrahamic religions: Islam,
Right.
Judaism, and Christianity, right? They're
Right.
thousands of years old. The
Right.
message hasn't really changed. Honestly, how they're trying to reach people hasn't really changed up until about, I'd say, about the last 10 years. They've started to try new things and new ways
Right.
and
Right.
new interpretations, to reach a broader crowd. But what you also
Right.
have in these recent years is you have a much broader, I don't want to say an atheist movement, and I don't want to say a pagan movement, but people really looking to these older belief systems, more nature bound. I don't want to say Wiccan and witchcraft and stuff like that, because I think all that takes a lot of time to learn and research and stuff like that. But you see a lot of people really believing in nature and energy and stuff nowadays, and kind of getting away from the church and everything like that. And I think the main reason, so for me, I think the main reason with that is, one, it's romanticized now. You have a lot of TV shows, you have Viking shows, you have witch shows, you have stuff like that that kind of show you this alternate belief system with energy and magic and stuff like that. But then what you also have is, if you break it down, the older religions, your older pagan and polytheistic religions, all the gods and goddesses were very entwined with the earth that we live in. They were the sun, they were the moon, the water, the earth. Fire, everything. They were very material. They were very involved. Exactly. Elemental was the word I was looking for. Perfect. They were very elemental. They were very involved in your everyday, your harvests and the turning of the seasons. And the reason they did sacrifices of animals and people and stuff like this, because these were very, these gods were very human. Like they made the gods in their image. People made the gods in their image. They had human emotions. They had fears. They had affairs. They had anger. They had
drama, all kinds of tea in school,
if you read any of the mythologies and stuff like that. And what you have is, when you had this breakthrough, when you had this Hebrew, the ancient Hebrews came out and they had the original Judaism, that God was one of the first times in history that the God was not a part of the earth. He was not in the sun and the moon and the water and the earth. He was
He was beyond.
I'm going to say, beyond. I'm going to say in a different realm, but I think what I'm trying to say. And then obviously Christianity adopted that, and then Islam was the last one to come along in the 5th and 6th century, and they adopted that as well. Where for the first time you had one God, and that God is completely separated from your earth. He created everything, but he doesn't. He's not hanging out in the sun. He's not in charge of the moon. He made that stuff. It operates independently. It does its thing, and you operate independently. You do that thing, and I think that's why today, because we've had those older religions for so long, and people just they're not finding the solace in it that they used to have. So people are turning to nature. Things that where they're finding more peace in nature and in the sun and in the water and in the moon than they have found. And so my biggest question to you is, what do you think that I don't want to say the church, because it's not one church anymore, it's multiple churches, but,
it's the body,
but as a faith, as Christianity as a faith, what can they do to reclaim and just bring people back into the fold? Because people like me, I think I'm gone forever, but what can they do for these younger generations that have more technology and they're more in tune to everything, and they're even the ones that are turning towards nature and the sun and the moon and stuff like that? What can the church do to revamp, to obviously the message doesn't need to change, but the delivery method and the interpretation probably does.
Well, so man, everything you just said. It's funny. I've literally been writing about this the last couple of days, and it's so funny you say that. I just got inspired to write about this. There's been a big push of universalism, right?
Yes.
And spiritualism. Universalism, spiritualism. There's a big push of humanism. Obviously that's been going on. Humanism, has been around for, forever. You go back to the ancient Greeks and Egyptians and everything. But you made a very interesting point. I think at the end of the day, this sums up everything you just said when you see the big push in today's society, right? We have, like they did back in the olden days, they made the gods in their own image.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is that the reason people are, this is just my theory, is I believe the reason people are turning so heavily, so heavily to universalism and things like that, or we are our own gods. We see that big push of I'm my own God, and this, that, is because, remember this, if I lean, which that in itself is really hard for me to process when you say you are your own God, because you cannot create yourself. You cannot create yourself. You cannot, and think about this, if the aspect of God, right, is a omnipotent, omnipresent, all-powerful, flawless entity, then you saying you're your own God contradicts yourself, because you are flawless.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? So now you're in this constant oxymoron and conundrum of existence, right? Because if you say I am my own God, God is perfect, but you are not, and so therefore you're in contradiction. But I would say one of the big pushes for universalism, I think, in today's society and spiritualism, is the fact that one aspect is there's no necessarily accountability in that, right? Because if you think about it, with universalism and spiritualism, it's like I just flow. I just go with the flow. I just go with the energy. I feel good. I have good energy. I have bad energy. I just kind of roll with it. But there is no semblance of like, does this actually matter or does it not? Right?
Yes.
And there's no aspects of, is there anything that matters beyond my life? Does my life really matter? Because if you live with this aspect of your foundation being just the universe, your foundation is just whatever you feel at the moment, then you become a slave to your emotions. You become a slave to your feelings. You become a slave to the emotions, to the energies. So what happens is then now you're living based on impulse and not on purpose. Because the thing about, but if you stand on a perspective of like, okay, universalism or that, well, it doesn't require anything from me, right?
Right.
Because I mean, it's just the universe. We're just here. You know what I mean?
Well,
Go ahead.
The one thing I will say is universalism is not so much universalism at its foundation is the belief that all belief systems have power. Okay, so I'm a universalist. So I believe that every belief system has power. I don't think that Christians or Hebrews or Islamic people or Buddhists or Taoists or pagans, I don't think anybody's I don't think anybody's wrong. Okay,
right.
I think it's more of an interpretation of what works best for you. And if you really get down to it, if we're going to believe in a perfect higher power, right, that higher power is going to present itself to people in the best way that it can serve them. So we can sit here, we could sit here all day and argue over scripture and argue over mythology and stuff like that. What if?
Right.
But what if? And like this is one of the grounds that I've had many conversations on. Said, what if your God is the only God? What if it is a Christian God? But he's totally fine with the people worshiping him in a way, as long as that way is a positive way. Maybe he presented himself to the Greeks through the Greek pantheon. Mm-hmm. Maybe he presented himself to the Aztecs because that's what they required in their time. And so now in this time, in our modern time, universalism is on the rise, all right? Universalism is the intrinsic belief that all belief systems have power, that nobody's really wrong. It is a very pagan belief system because if you go back to the Roman times, the Romans would incorporate the gods of all the...
Yeah, they put everybody and everything,
the societies that they would conquer because they realized it was a lot easier instead of just rolling in and wiping people out and telling them that they're all wrong and these are our gods. We're like, no, man, your gods are real. Our gods are just stronger right now. You know, it was a lot easier to allow people to worship the way they wanted to worship. So I don't think that universalism, and if people are using universalism as a reason to, not have any responsibility or take away the culpability of their actions, then they're not just like people who use Christianity as a weapon or use Islam as a weapon. They're not using it correctly. They're not thinking about it correctly. But the point you brought up is very real. And you're right. I've seen that. I've seen people who were just like, I can do whatever I want because I believe in
because
this.
it's like whatever, And so let me clarify. So I'll clarify the neo-universalism. How about that? The neo-universal, this new spiritual universal movement of sort. I think so. Yeah, I mean, when you really get down to the weeds of it, here's what I find interesting, right? Because yes, you're correct. We could go back and forth with scripture, and I mean, we could do that all day, and and I think that's important. But I think one of the things we have to ask ourselves, since we're talking about faith and we're talking about belief and things like that, and yes, you were correct. Kenyatta, yeah, feelings change a lot. You know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, I think if your God is your emotions, then you're gonna have a hard day. You know what I mean? You're gonna have a rough life. Because think about this, emotions make great servants but terrible masters. You know what I mean? And that's something to really consider. But here's a question for you, right? Woke. Here's a question for you. You ready for this?
Hold on to that word woke. We're about to come back.
Yeah. Hold that thought right there. Here you go. Here's a question for you.
All right.
Why if there is nothing, right? Right? Which is say from the atheistic perspective, right? Just throwing that out there because I'm sure we have people in the chat with it. Why, from the atheistic or universalistic, whatever you believe, why believe in anything anyway? Like, why do we feel the need to believe at all? You know what I'm saying? Like look at it from a perspective of, they have like atheist church services.
That seems a little ridiculous.
Yeah, they have atheist meetings, and so they wouldn't call them maybe church, but they have atheist meetings where they get together and they discuss, the read about this is they get together and they talk about the nothingness it's hard to really explain because it's like you said, it's a little bit ridiculous. It's like how do you process, like why is there, and not everybody believes this, but why is there a need to believe in anything?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Why is agriculture? Why do we need, one thing I have found is that atheists make it a point to go and prove their atheism, or prove that Christianity is wrong, or prove that this spiritual thing is wrong, and this spiritual, like why? If there's nothing to believe in, why do you feel the need to do that?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Or on the flip side, I would dare to even say that even with Christians, yeah, the Bible says go ye into all the world and preach the gospel and make disciples, right? But the thing about that is that doesn't mean you go around and you tell everybody, oh, you're a horrible human being and you're gonna burn in hell and you're gonna do that. Like that's not anything. You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing? That's not right either. I think that the question we have to ask ourselves is, why do we feel the need to believe in the first place? Where does that even come from? What is missing that we have to even think that?
So
that becomes the question.
Would you say that, if we took away because it's almost family oriented, however your family starts out, like that's going to be your initial faith. Because I was forced to go to church when I was younger. I even went to Catholic school for a very long time. I broke with that when I was of age, and I could make my own decisions, and I didn't have to go anymore. And then obviously I've done my own research, I've done my own reading, and stuff like that. I've come, and that's why I am where I am today. That's why I can sit here and I can back up my belief system. I can back up the things that I feel, and I think it's gotten to a point where, why do we feel the need to believe in something? Because I think at the emotional and mental level, we need to feel like there is a purpose to our existence. So people look for a purpose of, why am I even alive? To sit here, I think it was Neil, what's that guy's name? Neil deGrasse Tyson, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? I remember watching a video where he was talking about like how crazy the numbers are that for you to exist, like how many, he went all the way down to talk about
4 trillion to 1 or something like that.
The chances of you existing as a human being, right? So we can sit here and say that it's all randomized, but we don't know. We can sit here and say that it's all it's all planned, but we don't really know what that plan is, because obviously that plan is beyond our understanding. So the reason I think that people need to believe in something else, I think they just believe that something has to be in control, something or someone or a god or many gods or whatever, aliens, depending on what audience we have today, is up there and has created us for some other purpose.
Right.
But what if you want to bring it back down, let's say, I think that the scope is a product of Dennett, Darwin, and Brody mind virus framework, the cultural evolution of ideas, modifying behaviors, and those behaviors leading to genocide and the criteria that ensues. Well, that was fucking deep, bro. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was all.
That escalated quickly. That's good. That's good input, though.
That's one of the Marines that I served with when I was in 2-8. He's got his own series. I think you have a book series, right? 03XX. You got books out, right? He'll answer us when he gets a chance. Mm-hmm. Everybody should go check him out. He's written some really good shit. He's got his own good stuff that he's putting out there too. So go check out his material as well. Brings up a good point. Yes, we have a lot of frameworks that we're working with, and if you take your Dennett, your Darwin, and your Brody, and then you add it to these new theological constructs that we have, you know, we see a lot of control and a lot of almost breeding of faith, because like I said, you grow up in the South, you're going to be a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
One of the factions of Christianity you are going to be associated with when you're young. Now, whether or not you continue on with that later on, I think it's more of a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose, and a sense of, if you look at, you know, I think I talked about this before. If you talk about, like, you know, how you become a terrorist, right? You have Boron's pathway and Mahogany's staircase, right? And there's these steps that lead you from being a normal, everyday human being to a terrorist.
Mm-hmm.
And you take terrorist out of it and you apply it to radical Christianity.
Yeah.
Radical
You can plug
Islam.
it in anywhere.
You can plug and play as you go. So, you know, why do people feel the need to have a God? They want a purpose, man. Like, the idea that we just exist, your memoir and the podcast and the second book in the works. Good stuff here, gents. I appreciate it, brother. I'm definitely gonna go check out your stuff. I've been meaning to check out I remember your first memoir that came out, and I definitely want to check it out. I think people feel the need to believe for guidance, and it gives people a sense of structure. I mean, structure is good. We as human beings thrive more in structure than we do in chaos. If you ever meet somebody that lives their life in chaos, like, they don't do well. Like, they're just living day to day. They're in that survival mode, which goes back to one of our older talks.
Survival, right. Adaptability versus survivability.
Yep. That's one of our very first shows that we had to talk about. But it all comes together. So, you know, when it's faith-based, you know, it really depends on how you were raised, what you're looking for, and how you want to live your life. So if you have faith in a higher power, are you doing works of good because you want the reward, or you're afraid of, you know, damnation or some punishment at the end? Or are you just genuinely out there looking at humanity saying, look, this human being needs help, I'm going to help them, and maybe, you know, when I'm down, someone will just genuinely want to help me too.
Yeah, so so I would throw this out there, right? So we talk about the reward versus the damnation, or just doing it because whatever. How about this one? So there's an aspect of faith that I think we kind of overlook sometimes, is that's experience, right? Yeah. So if my faith is based on experience, I know, like, you know, in Psalms talks about, I've never seen the righteous forsaken. So there's an aspect of, I know that I've been in some stuff that I shouldn't have made it out of, right? And I know for sure that there's stuff that I can't explain, but I survived this, and I don't know how I survived. I don't know who, you know. I don't know. Like, you think about, like, the situation. I know, like, and people, it's always funny. Like, and I use this as a story that to this day has been one of the things where, you know, when I was a kid, like, I got knocked in the pool, right, and I could not swim. Yeah,
that's not stereotypical at all.
No, it's not stereotypical at all, right? Hey, which is so bad, bro. I was absolutely a statistic and a stereotype in the Marine Corps, because, bro, it was, all right, side note, hey, real quick. Hey, so side note, this is so bad, and like, black folks, we gotta do better. So I'm in recruit training, bro. I'll never forget it. When they came in there and called for the Iron Ducks, right? And when they called for the Iron Ducks, and tell me why everybody who stepped out of our platoon, of course, just happened to be black. Bro, I go outside. Wait. So we go outside, and literally, it's a sea of darkness. It's every colored recruit is all in this formation, and there's like 2 guys out there who are not colored, right? And I said, I got so mad. Oh man, we gotta do better, man. But I mean, it is what it is, right? But like I was saying, man, but I think that but yeah. But anyway, so I remember being a kid though, man. I remember I got knocked in the pool right now. I remember that you know, like, I was toast. Like, nobody saw me go down. I was toast. Like, that was it for me. And I remember somebody came and picked me up out the water, right? Somebody brought me up out the water and brought me back up on the side and brought me to my mother. Well, what was interesting was I'm wiping my eyes and I'm looking to see this person who you know, helped me, or whatever the case was. And I remember, you know, that person, like, swam off. I saw them go down and they never came back up, right? And so when I look at things like that, it's like, okay, now that seems like really like, whoa, that's kind of like one of those stories you hear like, oh, this person was there and then they weren't. But I think for me, because I believe in the spiritual world and because I do believe in the spiritual aspect, I
Yeah.
do believe that there are times where there's divine intervention. I do believe that there are times where God steps in and he moves on your behalf.
Yeah.
I do believe that those times happen. And I do think that there's a scripture that talks about how people interact with angels and don't even know it. You know what I mean? Because they're in, human form. You know what I mean? And so, and then if you really, and then there's a whole other aspect, but I do believe that those things exist. I believe that there are aspects of the experiential side of things, of faith, that we can't even comprehend, right? That there are things that that it's only by God's grace that I'm even still here because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And now am I saying that, oh, because I didn't stub my toe getting out the bed this morning, that, oh, God was looking out for me, angels moved my foot. You know what I mean? Am I saying that? No, but I'm not saying, but it's not out of the realm of possibility, right? I think when we're talking about existential things, when we're talking about faith, when we're talking about God, when we're talking about belief systems, the reality is there's nothing that's outside of the impossible, right?
No.
Because there's nothing that's out of possibility. And I think through experience and seeing things in my life that I cannot explain, when I say that when I see people do things or say things, when I've had, oh yeah, put the collection plate. But you know what I'm saying? Where's the organ? But like, when I've had people come and speak to my life, when I put it like this, when I've had people come speak into my life that don't know me from Adam, but they speak something directly that speaks to my situation, and
Yeah.
you can't just ignore that, right? When you have like, so I don't know if you know this, but so I had a son.
You have a son?
Well, my son actually passed away a few years ago.
Oh,
Um,
shit. I'm sorry, brother.
now you're good. You're good. You're good. You're good. You're good. Now, like I said, I'm good. But when I say this from a perspective of experience because I remember going through that trial because it was a sudden loss, right? And I remember going through that trial, and I remember there were people that came and spoke to me out of nowhere that I don't know from any other stranger. I don't know from the backside of my hand, but they came and would say things to me. I remember a guy. Yeah, and I noticed, and people might hear this and be like, "Oh, he one of them crazies," you know what I mean? And I don't want to be that, right? But what I can say is this, I cannot make. I wish I could make this stuff up. I remember, my mother. We were having a conversation after it all went down, and he was born. He actually passed in 7 weeks, going on 7 weeks, and it was 2 days after I met him. I wasn't able to be at his birth. I was able to come down there. I saw him. It was like I had this unction, you need to go see him. So I went,
Yep.
saw him. We hung out, talked about the world's problems and all that kind of stuff. And then I remember 2 days later, I get there. I go back to, I went back to New Orleans, back to Orlando,
Okay.
because I was living in Orlando after I got out. I was in Orlando, and she was in New Orleans. And I remember, um, remember getting that call. And she was like, he was rushed to the hospital, et cetera, et cetera. And then a couple hours later, I couldn't get information. And obviously he didn't make it, and it was it was a rough situation. It was a rough time, right? Because everything had been shaken in my life. My whole foundation had been shaken, because it was like, how could this happen? I finally decided to live right and get my mind together and get my soul. I finally decided to go on the right path, and then this happens, and you're just like, what? You know what I mean? It's a big question mark. But then what was so interesting is that the series of events that happened after that, I can't even explain how impactful it was, because I had people that were just, hey, Reese, I don't know why, but I feel like I should tell you this. I don't know why, but I feel like I should just tell you this. People don't even know me. And they were
Yep.
speaking to my situation. And so it's very difficult to explain those type of things without stepping into a spiritual or something beyond us, right?
Yeah.
To me.
So,
So
so,
it's very difficult to explain. There.
so 100%, man. Like, obviously, sorry for your loss. Had
Yeah,
no idea about it. But,
yeah,
you know, to sit here and tell people, like, a lot of people peg me as an atheist. Like, I don't believe that anything exists. And that's just simply not true, because I have run into multiple experiences that I have no explanation for. Now, whether it's talking to some random person or, you know, a certain somebody that continually comes into my life, that just, it should, like, these situations shouldn't happen when they happen. Not that they shouldn't happen, but how they
Right.
happen